next thing on the agenda is for Rob from Ernst & Young is going to pass out a quiz to the Greenlight company members on definition of debt service coverage ratios. Well, on that. I will just say one thing. I think most of the folks here know that before I came here to PSPA, I worked in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I actually met Rob Bannister from Ernst & Young. It wasn't called that back then. Probably around 10 years ago, maybe 2004, 2005, in a room kind of like this in the Charlotte Government Center. And I don't think he remembered me because he was up there in front of a screen like this, doing the same presentation with these graphs and charts, and I didn't understand any of it. And so it's taken me 10 years to follow him. But I knew, I remember still now, back then in 2004, the Charlotte system had really expanded their bus system and was just starting or about to start constructing the rail, and there were big cost overruns. There were cost overruns that were in the paper every single day about that program. And then I go to this presentation by Rob, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is helpful information to help us get out, follow a path to financial stability here in Charlotte. Unlike the tomes of planning studies that you and I are usually familiar, and PowerPoints that I had seen, I was like, I don't understand it, but I think we can follow this and use this. And so when the business committee, especially with the Greenlight Business Committee, kept talking at our meetings about making sure that our numbers were right and vetted, and do we have a sustainable plan, I thought of Ernst & Young, and I thought, well, I feel a little bit like I thought at the time that this might be overkill. And I'm sure you're feeling that way right now too. This is too much information, or more information than that Greenlight public engagement needs to really have. But I apologize for maybe if it was long, but I don't think it was I don't think it's overkill for where we are at now. I mean, what Ernst & Young does and what they do very, very successfully for existing transportation systems and projects is develop these plans that keep them on a sustainable path. And I know we're still a year away from having even a referendum pass, which is not a done deal. But it's so helpful that we have this plan and that we know, even if we don't understand it all, that we have looked at it and come up with those mitigation measures about what if some things don't happen that we are not expecting. I think that will help all of us. It'll certainly help us in my finance department at PSDA, but it will help all of us and give us, I think, a comfort level that we have vetted this project as many possible ways as we can. So that leads me to my final part of the Greenlight plan.
Sure.
Question?
Sure.
Yeah.
I just briefly here, you mentioned how this all came about. And I just want to say that it's, government doesn't always listen to recommendations from the private sector and the stakeholders. You listened, and I want to thank you for spending ESDA resources, candidly, you and your board, to do this. Because scrubbing these numbers, which is what was sort of the discussion that we had in the business stakeholders group, and being able to answer, more importantly, being able to answer the question by a member of the public that would say, if I give you my opinion for the next 15 years, are you going to be able to deliver that program that you've just shown me? Yeah. And the answer is, it's tight, it's thin, things can happen, but yes is the answer. And I will say, so thank you for doing that, you and to your board. I think the second part is that what you've just seen here, this is unusual to be doing this kind of detailed analysis at this point in the project. It's usually after the cost overruns have hit the fan, so to speak, that you come and hire these guys to kind of figure out what the hell am I going to do. So the fact that you're ahead of that curve, I think helps all of us be able to, whether any of us will remember what we just saw. The fact of the matter is the the feeling that there has been a scrub of these numbers. And the credibility of the people behind it, I think, is terribly important. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Okay, so let me not go on much further. One key element, it's just like we were talking about, is how are we going to deliver this system? How are we going to deliver the plan? And so we have a component of the Greenlight Pinellas plan. The totality of the Greenlight Pinellas plan includes a delivery plan where that we developed over the last several months by looking at, I think, about 16 other transportation systems or transit systems that have launched major improvements in their systems and best practices of what they have done to help deliver their plan and to keep public confidence in their plan. And the recommendations that came out of that are up on the screen. So the three main items that we want to ensure that that PSDA starts and maintains over the period. Number one, maintain a detailed website. I mean, that's sort of intuitive in these modern days, but have a system in place that anyone of the public can always go to get a single point to get their information about the project. Number two is to have ongoing citizen councils, constant public input, maybe not exactly like the Greenlight Council, but this sort of dynamic where there's always public engagement from a diverse section of the community. And three is to never stop reaching out into the community, continuous outreach. Again, Penny for Pinellas has a website. There's some other examples. Seattle has an incredibly detailed one where you can click on different buttons and get an update and detailed studies on all of their different projects. We would try to implement something like that. We're proposing two committees, two standing PSTA citizen committees that would report directly to the PSTA board. A writers committee and a committee that probably would have recommendations mostly from the business community. I'm thinking that they would have be appointed by the different chambers, perhaps chambers of commerce, but maybe other groups as well would appoint folks that would meet perhaps quarterly to oversee the capital improvement plans and our schedules, that we're keeping on schedule for that, as well as other sort of activities. The writers would focus on day-to-day operating issues that come up with the services we're providing. And then last, it is so important that we don't stop with this Greenlight process, even if we are successful in November 2014, but that continue on. There's this little picture or a news article that came out in Denver about a poll that was done after the referendum passed and after they had pretty much finished most of the projects that were paid for by the sales tax, that they keep doing polls and they keep verifying with the community that the community still is pleased with their decision and sort of validating that over time, and that we would learn from that and do that as well. So I will continue to go speak to Rotary clubs no matter where they are out for the remainder of my life. So that is what the Greenlight Pinellas plan is. The next thing is for this Greenlight Council to consider endorsing the Greenlight Pinellas plan. And it's not one of those items I just mentioned, it's all of those items combined. And we have thought that unlike maybe a governmental entity, which this is not exactly, like the ACPT, which passed a resolution, which is included in your packet, that, I've lost it. That you would have a more informal endorsement that had those 5 things that I had on here. But, that is also in your packet. That would have these 4 elements that you would consider approving. Number 1, to endorse the Greenlight Pinellas plan, including the plan elements. Pages that in your packet. Page 24. Number 2 is that you believe the PSTA has performed its due diligence and has completed the technical work. Number 3, you as council members are willing to continue reaching out to your respective groups to inform the community about Greenlight Pinellas. And number 4, that you believe that the citizens of Pinellas County should be heard for a referendum vote on November of 2014.
Any discussion on the endorsement of the Greenlight plan? Is there a motion to endorse the Greenlight plan?
Second.
Those 4 elements were...
Are we going to have as much fun as they're having?
We can go borrow some.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Opposed? All right. Yes. Okay, our next item is the Board of County Commission workshop and the ballot language, which you also have a copy of at your seat.
Yeah, let me just say a couple things about this, or to start this off. And Ronnie Duncan, who was there with me, and I think Harriet was there as well on October 29th. I know all of you and I have been working through this for now quite a while, but many folks at the county staff and in the county leadership had not been as engaged as you all are until just recently. And I'm not sure exactly what triggered it, since I'm pretty much living this all the time, but about a month ago, the county staff, the county executive, sort of acknowledged that this was a major initiative that was coming down the pike, and that they needed to prepare not only the county board for, but also the county sort of bureaucracy or the county staff, the entity that is Pinellas County, how this will affect the county. And so, even though Alan Zimmett, PSTA's attorney, who's here, and I have been meeting with the county attorney and the county executive since June, it really kind of got going in September, and the county went through a very detailed analysis of all how this project, how these projects might influence the county. Maybe with a perspective like, oh my gosh, it might affect the county, so we got to make sure that doesn't happen. And then, so the response obviously is, no, we wanted it to have an impact on our community. So that has really been sort of the issue. There are some nuts and bolts details that are very, very important, namely the ballot language and the sales tax, which is approved by the county commission. That's why the Greenlight Council is set up to present to the county commission. Unlike the PSTA ad valorem property tax, which was voted on in the 1980s and was approved by referendum by the community, this is a sales tax that is approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So the sales tax is just a different type of revenue source than other transportation sources. So the county commission has to pass an ordinance that includes ballot language in it to go on the ballot in November 2014. They also have to approve an interlocal agreement. The purpose of the agreement is to say we collect the state Department of Revenue collects the sales tax, and then the funds flow to PSTA to implement the Greenlight plan. But perhaps that interlocal agreement might encompass other elements to it that will govern the relationship of this sales tax funding to fund the Greenlight plan and its management or receipt by Pinellas County. So Alan and I are meeting now regularly with the county attorney and the county executive to work out the details of that interlocal agreement. What is going to be voted on December 10th by the county is this ordinance that will include the language which the latest draft is, I passed out to you. It's a little bit different than what was in your packet, based on some comments made by the County Commission at their workshop on October 29th. This still might not be the final ballot language, but this is what PSTA is recommending and is shared with the County Commission. They still might adjust it. It's very entertaining, more entertaining than Ernst & Young to deal with 7 different attorneys wordsmithing a document. But what PSTA and the PSTA board talked about at their last meeting or agreed to is these 4 guidelines, which sometimes have KISS, but simplicity, flexibility, transparency, and integrity. That's what the Greenlight Pinellas project program is all about. And I think this language does a pretty good job of keeping simple. You'll notice in the blue additional language that has been added, I get a little bit nervous because that looks a little bit complicated to me. And so I would certainly love to have your input on that additional language. That language was added at the request of the ACPT to ensure that PSTA might take a look at public-private partnerships as a way to implement this program. You remember Ernst & Young had as a possible cost-saving measure, or something that we are going to explore, and Ernst & Young is going to do some of this analysis for us, is to look at implementing the rail system through a public-private partnership. What that would be something like Denver has done for one of their rail lines, where we would do an RFP or a bidding process essentially that says basically we would like a vendor or a consortium of vendors to design, build, operate, and maintain and finance a rail system from Clearwater to St. Pete under our specifications for the next 35 years. And then we pick the low bidder, and then they do it. It's a lot more complicated than how I just described it, but this language, if there was any question to whether or not we could do that or not, this is what language is suggested that would encompass that. But again, I think that it's an example of how you can quickly get this ballot language very complex and kind of lose the simplicity and the straightforwardness in the question. There's been a lot of discussion in the newspaper and by the County Commission about the term passenger rail, and the Tampa Bay Times suggested that maybe was misleading and it should be called local rail. So, of course, we split the baby and now we have local passenger rail. I think the County Commission will discuss that. What I think might be helpful would be if the Greenlight Council would sort of take a position either that emphasized simplicity and transparency or something like that to guide the County Commission as they try to consider. They're basically balancing whether or not we make the language as safe and comprehensive as possible to account for any scenario of someone might contest it or other issue that might come up versus simplicity. And it's not easy, but I think maybe the council could provide some comment on how you think the ballot language should be presented to the voters.
I mean, I'm not going to say, but I was at that ACPT meeting having that discussion, and now I read it sounds way more complicated than our discussion on
I don't remember.
and/or financial obligations in
He was
connection.
trying to put P3.
So,
Yeah,
there was a discussion about P3s and bonding, but that
And
does
should that be in there? And
a lot more complicated.
I don't like what's
Just read it, so.
I don't like it at all.
Let's just go around, Don.
Mr. Chair, having suffered through the last ballot with 11 legislative sponsored voter amendments on there, reading this particular language makes me remember those bad moments. I think consumers are the ones that are voting. The general public is voting. It doesn't need to see a legal document that considers all possible scenarios in 170 words. I think it needs to be very simplistic. It needs to say what it does, similar to what the last slide in our handout says, where it's, hey, we're going to give you a bus system and light rail, and you know, it needs to be something that the consumer can go, oh, that's what Greenlight means, right? It doesn't need to be local passenger rail and financial obligations in connection therewith. I mean, those words all need to just vaporize and have a very straightforward statement that says, whatever language, simplicity, that says we want more money to make a better bus system and we'll possibly get light rail. That's my
Hear from Alan before we go around the table here.
Let me just give you some parameters. First off, start with the statute provides we get 75 words in the question and 15 words in the title. The legal requirement is that the question must accurately reflect the central purpose of whatever it is you're asking to be done. The other legal requirement is this is, albeit we try to write it so people can understand it, but understand it is a legal document. It establishes the extent to which the money can be used. So, and we had a little bit of a discussion with ACPT when it was brought up, well, let's mention P3. Well, if you mention P3, then does that mean if you don't mention other potential uses that support the bus plan, improvement plan, and light rail, does that mean that PSA can't use the funds for other uses because you specifically mentioned P3? That's why if we want to address P3, we kind of need broader language that is more legalistic than the original question was. I want the committee to realize we can't just write a question that is, you know, are you in favor of improving bus service and providing light rail in Pinellas County? It's a question mark. That doesn't give PSA authority to use his money for what PSA needs to have the legal authority to use the money for. So while we're writing a document for the public to understand, we are writing a legal document that will have legal effect on PSA's use of the funds. Okay, so there's reasons we unfortunately, we have to write them. There's basically two audiences. There's the judge and there's the people who vote. And we have to balance those because it's no good to win the referendum and then not be able to use the money for the Greenlight Pinellas plan.
Stacy?
The language that's up on the screen, does that preclude P3 or other opportunities?
Yeah, when we wrote the language originally, Brad and I both knew, and bond counsel and my firm knew that we intended to use P3 project. It was a specific request of a member of the ACT that we add language that more specifically referenced P3 projects, so we added that one little part. We added the word local for, as Brad said, different reasons.
Well, actually, I do, sorry. Just for clarification, it has to be a single subject? The referendum needs to stick to, the question needs to stick to a single subject? I'm just curious, I'm not challenging it, I'm just curious if that's one of the
That's hard to answer yes or no. And I guess I need to know what you're getting at, because if an ordinance has more than one subject, I mean, if you were to make for example, a change to a charter that has more than one subject, your questions could address more than one subject. I don't know how to answer that in abstract.
Yeah.
I guess is why I'm struggling with that. If I knew what you were, I mean, this obviously the one subject is the sales surtax and how those funds could be used.
Yeah, I agree. It was,
Question
it's an
addressed.
academic question if it's just one of the, just like it has to be 75 words and a 15-word title, does it also have to be limited to a single subject?
The main thing it has to do is that it has to reflect an accurate statement of the main purpose of whatever is the question is addressed.
Okay.
So that purpose, that, what we're addressing is like a charter that has multiple purposes, you could have multiple subjects.
Julie?
I think the question that Stacy asked tells the story. Several of us were, a lot of us were at the ACP team meeting on Monday, and we didn't see the result, the language result of the request. And of course, we were all supportive of the request because, you know, that sounds good to the public, right? But if this is the result, you know, we can't change, certainly we can't go back to undo what that particular person requested, but I'm confident that if she saw this, she would be equally disturbed as we are. And as long as there's no legal issue, I would think we would go back to the original language. But I do have one other question, and that is the word local brings up another question. We are all hoping that we get a rail line across Howard Franklin Bridge. And if this says local, is somebody going to dispute that that's not local if we contribute to that? So I'm nervous about putting the word local in there because I think that, again, adds more ammunition, if you will, for somebody to argue that, I mean, Pinellas County, whatever's in Pinellas County, it's a Pinellas County referendum. I think saying the word local is redundant.
It's also limiting.
And limiting, yes, I would not want to do that. I mean, I understand the reasons why others are asking for it. I'm just thinking about the future and what our hopes and desires are. And if FDOT and Hillsborough and Pinellas decide to join together and have a rail connection across the Howard Franklin Bridge, is someone going to say that's not local? I'd just be concerned.
And that's a legitimate concern. I mean, I think the reason, the purpose was allegedly to differentiate between the high-speed rail. And I think that was the main purpose, so that the voters didn't think that this was high-speed rail.
But again,
But you bring up a legitimate
but
concern.
again, what if we want to do that in the future? What if there is some opportunity for that 50 years from now? Not for particularly what is in the plan today, but,
You'd have to go back out to referendum.
well, see, I don't want to have to do that. Why would any transportation agency have to do that? We're saying we want to expand transportation, and in order to do it, we need the 1 cent to do it. Now, you know, this is our plan today. 30 years from now, with new technologies, we may, and if we do have a number of P3s, let's say, that save money, we may be able to take those monies saved and add new technologies and new different kinds of rail to somewhere else that we can partner with people. So why would we ever want to limit ourselves in that way?
And you're making the argument why we took out the Greenlight, the reference to Greenlight Fell's plan that was in an early draft of the ballot, which for that exact reason.
Right.
So
To
I'm not
me, I
arguing
think we
with
should go. I think we should go back to the original language. My original question had always been the only problem that I had with the language at all, and it wasn't really a problem. It was just that we did not include the discussion of getting rid of the ad valorem tax and mentioning that here. And it has been described to us ad nauseum as to why we can't put that there. It is a legal issue. And so, you know, I've accepted that. That is the way it is. I just think we're muddying it up.
I'm going to make it real simple. Now that I see all of these in blue, Like I stated Monday, I loved it the way it was. I could understand it. I knew what it was for. And I would not support adding these blue lines, these blue words, the words in blue, even local and the rest. I think that just confuses it. I take it back.
Anyone from our business committee have any thoughts?
I have a question. Just in the interest of clarity, is transportation, a few times it's used, modifying the wrong noun, may be confusing because it looks like it's a transportation sales tax.
That's what it's called. That is the official title under the statute is the Regional Transportation Sales Surtax.
Okay, that is a proper noun.
So that is the
Doesn't
proper
mean it's proper,
term.
it just means that's the way it's stated.
That's what the legislature has
You
determined.
tax on transportation sales as opposed to buying a pack of gum.
That is what the legislature has determined is the appropriate name.
They get to write page long ballot language too.
Yeah, they get to write a lot longer ballot questions.
Well, I think the passengers, the word local in passenger rail came out because not so much to distinguish between the light rail, but our good friend Tim Nickens, who uses ink more than anybody else I know in the world, decided that passenger rail makes it sound like Amtrak. But we do not want it to sound like Amtrak. That's his words. And so it was then local. When somebody came back and said, let's take the word passenger out and just make it local rail. Well, now you've got local passenger rail up in there. I mean, I personally think the key three thing is blown out of proportion. You can put that in interlocal agreement. There's a whole host of ways to do that. Because despite the fact that people sitting in this room may have some ideas of what B3 is,
Right, everybody else.
it's not many of the folks out there do. And so let's not confuse the issue. I think to go back to what the gentleman said at the county commission workshop, in public, so I guess one or two people stood up and said this, is I just want a simple ballot. Just put something on there I can read. I'm supporting it, but make it so that I can support and read. And that's what we have to do.
Does that fit the 70 and 15 words thing?
Yeah, what happens
We
when it's
revised the title because depending upon the word countywide, and since Brad and I talked today, I did some research, and countywide seems to be one word. Why is, I don't remember how we ended up with it being hyphenated, but actually if you count countywide as two words, that is 16. So we have changed the title to say levy of countywide, we mean countywide one word, 1% transportation sales surtax to fund public transit. That eliminates the word of in between funding of public transit and clearly gets down to either 14 or 15.
Harriet, as chair of the ACPT, and these recommendations coming from the ACPT, do you have any motion to your comments about deleting that, or?
Yeah, because I think if we all had seen this and had some more talk, we would have said no, because I think everybody was very comfortable with it. So I would make a motion that we accept the ballot language excluding the local, the blue additions. Can I say that? Make it easier? Excluding the blue additions.
Second.
And does that mean, are you
And
okay
and
with
recommending
the new title?
the new title, yes.
Okay, so motions for the new title that's in your packet and to exclude the blue additions in the ballot language itself, correct? Second?
Jeff, just,
I did.
yes, should take public comment.
Anyone from the public wish to speak? Okay. Sit up there.
I won't go there if you don't want to, but can I take a read to it?
Please.
Okay. There is this misnomer out there saying that we're asking for a 1% transportation sales surtax, not of 1 cent. This says 1%. There's this discussion going on out there that says if you add a penny, it's really 14% increase, not a 1%. Okay, so I want us to be careful. No, we got a campaign on that we're not setting ourselves up for failure. Is it really a 1% or a 1 cent?
It's a great
See, I'm
question.
thinking
And
1
then-
cent in my.
I always think 1 cent, always.
Yeah, this is why you don't let attorneys do this. Love you dearly. But seriously, I mean,
No.
because it's not a 1% increase, because if there's a 1% sales tax, that implies it's 1% of, it would be 1% of 7 cents already, which is 0.07, I mean, it's not the
It's
same
not
thing.
1%, not 1 cent.
1 cent.
It's 1 cent.
This is exactly what Hillsborough is saying.
Well, and look how they work.
Yeah. Let's not.
Tallahassee, I mean, I don't know, I mean,
I think the 1 cent is the way.
Alan, you want to respond to that?
The statute talks in terms of percent. If you talk about 1 cent, 1 cent what?
sorry,
What?
1 cent per what?
Oh,
1 cent.
So we now have to say 1 cent per dollar.
okay.
I mean, just, if you say 1 cent sales tax, it's,
Well, but they understand,
the
I mean,
statute uses the term 1%. That's where we got the 1%.
Go back and look at the,
I was just gonna-
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it says 1 cent, C-E-N-T, not 1%.
I was gonna make that same comment, that whatever Penny Campanella said, that's probably the right answer.
You have something to
It may
look up
not
now,
be the
Alan?
right answer.
I'm sorry,
No, that's a good point, because that has been brought up.
We all-
And we go by the way for 7 cents. 14%. It's not 1%. 1%. No, I know, but the people are using those.
Right, it's
always.
confusing.
I only have the renewal, I don't have the original Penny Campanella's question. I have to go back and get the initial.
Julie?
I had another question. You know, Ryan brought up that local version, and we just made a motion, which is fine. Is there a concern from you all that people are going to get confused on the word passenger rail? Do anybody have a concern about that? I just want to make sure, because it really, you could literally get rid of the word passenger and solve that problem, and just have the word rail. That way, there is never a confusion.
Well, with all due respect, with one, I wish we had had time to do some focus group work on this, on that very issue. But if you say rail, one could argue, that's great. CSX. I'm not saying I would argue that, but I think that somebody could take it again.
So you're saying no matter what we do, it could be misinterpreted in one way or another, so
And the only,
that's why.
the only thing about it, that we do say public transit, and public transit would not refer to.
I'm just saying, if it's a newspaper person that's making a stickler of it, if we get rid of, instead of adding local, you just get rid of the word passenger.
Okay, so can we,
You're right.
have your
Okay.
motion be to make the changes proposed to the title, delete the blue part of the referendum question, and just note that there is a concern on the 1 cent, 1%, and as staff moves forward and researches how it was done in the Penny or other places, have that brought up when you're dealing with the Board of County Commission and that stuff.
Because they're going to make
Let me understand that motion then. We're going to change the title as proposed, delete the blue sections from the ballot language, and make a recommendation that Brad and the staff research the 1 cent versus 1% in the title as it goes before the county commission. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good.
I think also just a note, we would like for all of you, all members of the Greenlight Council to attend, and we will work with you, but also prepare remarks. But attend the December 10th County Commission meeting. It's scheduled for 6:00 p.m. on December 10th, Tuesday. But we have noted on your agenda here that that's tentative because they have another major public hearing item scheduled right now for that, and they're trying to come up with date certain times for our item, the Greenlight item, and the other item. So 6:00 might change. It sounded like at the ACT, maybe the county commission wanted to keep Greenlight at 6 and move the other one, but we'll keep you informed, but just FYI on that.
We all get to wear green jackets or anything.
That's the Masters, that's not this.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Our last item is on the future of this committee. I think first of all is preparation for the county workshops that are listed and the public hearing. And what role can we or should we play in working with the Board of County Commissioners and the public to get people to those meetings. Been suggested that have one-on-one meetings with the Board of County Commissioners to see if they have any specific questions that haven't been addressed by Brad's 117 meetings. And just see if make sure there's no surprises anywhere, any new questions that anyone's come up with. If that's something we want to do, and how do we schedule those, or who has specific relationships with specific county commissioners they would like to work with.
Well, no sunshine law violations too, because they sit with many of them on committees that are actually talking about Greenlight, so.
And I should note to that effect that we have attempted to schedule one-on-ones with each of the county commissioners, and we have been successful at having five that Ms. Stacy Blake has joined me on three, and Ronnie has joined me as well.
So it would be satisfactory to continue those?
Continue those. I think
the out for sunshine purposes, let these two committees continue those meetings?
Correct.
Here.
Yeah. And I think we have one more to go that maybe, I don't think maybe has sunshine issues, so then I will invite all. I did send a notice to the non-elected officials. So those are ongoing. That's certainly one thing. You're all, I would say, certainly invited to attend on the 19th or on the 3rd. I think some other groups might try to attend some of those discussions with the county. And then hopefully we will, PSTA is working on developing some additional outreach activities between now and December 10th that we can engage your support for and maybe attend out in the community and along with a county commissioner or multiple to try to not only speak to the county commission, which we have been working with, but to talk about this vote out to the larger community. I think that's an important element as well.
And we discussed this a little bit at our last meeting. So we have, these functions wrapping up December 10th. It'll then move into a campaign from the private sector and PSTA defining its role that it's allowed to operate within the education side. And what role can this committee play in that advocacy piece? And I think there's been some interest from a lot of people up here to continue to be involved. I think Brad and Alan stated that PSTA probably shouldn't set that or endorse this committee, but this committee interested could go to the advocacy body, however that's created, and offer that help and be advised. Any thoughts on that? I think there was interest in everyone doing that, so.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest, because first of all, let's look back on this process. I think it's been one, even those that didn't think this process was going to be productive have become sold on the fact that it has been a productive process. And there's been substantive work come out of it, the least of which is the outreach and the fact that people are hearing about it. The Ernst & Young study, the HMTV study, all that I think has gone way past where we expected, and I think that's a positive, very positive thing. So, and we have now people on each of these three groups that we all convened that are motivated, energized, understanding most of the information, or if they don't understand it completely, they know where to get it, they know how to access it. It would be a shame to just spick it off and say, we'll catch you later kind of thing. My suggestion might be that we ask PSTA, first of all, we need to get PSTA, to keep PSTA away from the campaign itself, legally, forgetting the fact that we need their expertise from a technical and advisory capacity, but we need to make sure we don't get near that line so that we don't have to deal with that. Thus, the organic campaign is developing and will be up and running. But my thought is that we've got, November 19th, you've got December 3rd, you've got December 10th. That publicly we need to be visible and participate in. I would think that we ask PSTA for one last exercise, and that is in sometime in early January, to call a meeting of each of the three bodies that we represent, all the people that have been coming to our meetings. Bring them all together as one body. And first of all, let them know what has transpired informationally, as well as the EY study, the HTTP response. Give them that information, and tell them, and then at that point, the time passes from PSTA into what I would call an organic campaign. I can tell you that my successful campaign is that we're going to need to reach out to each and every one of them and continue to have them be our foot soldiers and our people out there on the boots on the ground every day for us. So I think it would be a nice opportunity to have sort of wrapping it up, thanking them, the conveners thanking them for their work and their time and effort, but also saying to them, you're not done yet, you don't want to be done yet, because here's how you can be involved going forward. But it not come from PSTA, it comes from the other body that's out there to just, again, an abundance of caution not to get up against that line, that legal line of what PSTA can and can't do. I personally see PSTA going forward, and the board, your board, very active in the education and outreach component. And you're going to continue to be called by your Rotary Club. You're going to continue to be called by neighborhood associations. And you all know it best. So I think that's an extremely important, critical role for someone to play, and that seems to be PSTA's right having to do that. So my suggestion would be is that we ask PSTA to convene one more of these big meetings, not individually, but collectively, and kind of wrap it up that way after the board, because that PCC is actually put on the ballot with what the language is, and we can, kind of look at the next phase.
Something PSTA would be amenable to? In form of a motion?
Whatever I just said.
Second. So yeah, there is a recommendation that PSTA bring all three full committees together sometime after the first of the year, update them on the county commission workshop and develop language, and let them then make a decision as to how to move forward. Any other discussion?
Not for language and emotion, but in our experience with the civic committee in particular, they really like the back and forth engagement. So maybe some of us can support PSTA in the design of the agenda for the mixed group so that it's not all reported. So that there's an opportunity for people to get a hold of something that they then can individually and with their group, whoever they represent, move forward.
Good point.
Something else to consider in moving forward. As we meet in January, which I do think is a good idea, everybody will have, something to say, I'm sure. I really do think that there is something to think about over this next month and a half. I think there can be two groups. I think there can be a campaign group and an education group. Some people may not be comfortable doing fundraising, some people may not be comfortable in that role, but have a lot of visible contacts in the area and can work with Brad and not cross the gray line, if you will. And maybe that is just the PSTA board members, or maybe that's the ACPT, with government connections. I don't know, but it might be two separate groups where PSTA has a group that they can meet with to go out and rally more than just the Rotary groups, but get town hall meetings going and that kind of thing. Because it has to be more than just Rotaries. And, to me, I see that advocacy arm, their connections are going to be, I think you all just met with Ray James of the world, and being able to meet with their employees, that kind of thing. I mean, I see advocacy, they both do education, but it's a little separate.
I
It's
think
not as,
that's a lot of what we can discuss as
Yeah.
those legal issues
Yes.
and how I'm a little concerned with two groups trying to say one message, which would be challenging. But PSTA might be the education arm of your bigger advocacy group, and they will
Yes.
role and they will be directed by that advocacy, which Rotary Club you go to, and so it's all under one umbrella, might be, to get to where the point is. And I think that might be the focus of that next meeting, is how that structure could be set up and what are those lines. So I think that's a good comment. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
No. Public comment. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? Okay, saying none. All those in favor?
Aye.
One other thing that has come up, and we're getting further down the road, but it's come up both in the recommendation here and the discussion of the Board of County Commission workshop. Jumping ahead to a successful referendum is the idea of an oversight committee. A part of the thing with the Ernst & Young, you get this blueprint, and then having both the PSTA board, the county commission has a role in it, but using that blueprint and not straying off it for political reasons or whatever comes down the road. So at some point, and we certainly don't have to, and maybe that's another role that this body can play, is after that advocacy piece. And people are asking now, how are we going to oversee this project of huge dollar amounts, a big project? But the idea of, can there be a citizen of government, an oversight committee? Because, like I said, the county commission is going to collect the money, hand it off to PSTA. They're going to want to make sure PSTA is doing the right thing, make sure it meshes in with the MPO's plan. So some of it we've done a really good job of doing, but that topic does come up as, should there be an oversight committee that is not a PSTA government entity? So sometime in the future, because it's never too soon to think about those things, because people are asking now. So something we might take up and think about.
I completely understand the intent of it, but help me understand why the ad valorem tax that's collected now, is it the amount, is it the sheer amount of it? Why the ad valorem tax that's collected now and held under the governance of the PSTA board doesn't require the same level of external?
I think that's part of it. It's a 3 or 4-fold jump in the amount of money that's being worked on. And again, because it's so fresh on everyone's mind, we're going to give you this money. How do we know you're going to spend it properly? It's just a very general question, but I think that's why it's fresh on everyone's mind.
And to some degree, some of the people that are also pushing that were close to the Hillsborough referendum, which had that as a part of that process.
So an opportunity for you.
So maybe we can just keep that in the back of your mind and maybe at this January meeting, or bring that up again as a future. We can keep it on the radar. But
Yeah, no, I think PSTA should come up with start it now. I mean, at least figure out how to do that because, I mean, there's a lot of ballot language includes that oversight language in there. And we fought it in Hillsborough for a while to figure out how people want to place in there. So I know it's not as big as, it's about the trust you have in PSTA. And we know Pinellas County has a great trust that there are people that want to know how that's going to work. So I think the sooner we announce something like that as part of how the money's going to be spent, the better off we are. So I wouldn't delay too much.
yeah, I think when T. Barter did that road trip, I think it was Dallas. And it might have just been a policy, I don't know how, but because they had multiple phases in the scope, the policy was if phase 1 gets overrun, you don't get any more money because then there will be a phase 4. So you have to do it in the budget. If that means scaling back phase 1 to be in the budget, you're not stealing from phase 2. Maybe we could look into how they did that, if that was an oversight committee or if that was written into where that was written into.
Chris, are you suggesting then that should be a part of ballot?
No. No. I think those principles of simple and easy and understood is what we really want to look for. But no, I was just saying, but I know people will ask that.
But you can do it interlocal. You can put that in interlocal agreement.
I just think we need a response quickly about that because right as they bang the gavel on approving this, it's going to be like, oh, what's that mechanism?
Good.
Brad, what's the committees that you're just getting ready to form right now? Are you not doing that? To a degree?
We were proposing to do what I think would be what
Fills
you
that
are
role.
suggesting,
Okay.
but
Because
we were
it's not
proposing
something
that not
different.
to kick in until following the sales tax passage.
Right.
Yep.
We could talk about having it launch earlier.
No, I didn't mean launching it early. I just meant having that plan.
Yeah,
so
he's
that-
already
It's
got
in
it.
the-
He's already got it.
President, that's-
And I think some of that too will change as the projects come to light. Right? When you talk about the BRT, the beaches, the hotels are going to be more interested than when you're building the gateway to downtown phase. So it might be a committee that has some flexibility in its membership and geography and interest and things like that. So.
Can I ask a separate question before we adjourn?
So we will just to end that, we'll put that on the agenda of the January meeting.
Yes.
We'll discuss further. Yes.
In item number 5, when we're talking about going to the county, one of the things it said in there was we're supposed to talk about how that presentation is going to go. Do we have an idea about that? When it's going to happen? If you're talking about the 10th, which is the actual public hearing, and there's the workshop at the 3rd, which I think is where all the pretty details are going to sort of be presented, correct? I mean, and then what is everybody's role besides sitting there? I mean, are you doing your presentation? I mean, how's all of that going to go?
It's going to go awesome.
I love.
That's not illegal.
Yeah. Check that spelling.
I'm just curious.
Originally, the idea was that, yes, the workshop on the 3rd would be a time where the Greenlight Council might be able to have a specific agenda item to hear sort of from the Greenlight Council. But it seems like now, and Alan and I are going to go meet with the county attorney tomorrow, and maybe a good idea. But it seems like the 3rd is not really going to be it's going to be more nuts and bolts, talking about the county's 77 questions that come up with, and ballot language, and talking about the meaning of different words. And the 10th will be the official public workshop, public meeting, and vote. And it would be more, I don't think this is the word impactful, for the council to present on the 10th. And what I envision doing is developing maybe some slides, but mostly just a speaking role, maybe not for all 9, but maybe, I don't know.
Maybe a
different
representative
people.
of the business group, a representative of the civic group, a representative of ACPT. Would that be a manageable, that way you're getting different perspectives?
I think you need to wait and see what the county has in mind. I suspect if we sit here, they have no clue what they're going to do. They're going to control timeline or anything.
Yeah.
The question, when you all are talking, is Mr. LaSala on your list?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. yes.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
all right.
He's the one that gave us 77.
Oh, I know, but,
Oh, yeah, he's on our list already. I'll tell you which list he's on. He's on our list.
but I didn't mention because
I'd say
maybe
nothing.
that's how you can figure out how to control what you're going to do.
Any other comments or
Well,
questions?
Brian, I'm sure you know that all of us stand ready and willing to assist at the December 10th or 3rd. However, it would be nice.
And I just want to thank everyone, not just this committee, but the staff, the chambers, everyone involved. I think when this started, it was way before the Greenlight started. I mean, we started having this discussion when I got on PSA 7 years ago. And I know the discussion went on for decades. But I think through no other subject matter, the county's really come together. We could do this for EMS and some of the budget stuff and other things, annexation, we could solve all kind of problems. But certainly the way that we've put together the MPO and the PSTA and all these groups and formed these committees and just the dialogue communication has been a testament to having 24 cities in the county and the business and the civic groups and everyone come together. It's been pretty amazing, and people recognize that. I know both the state and federal level, they said with the grant process, you guys have figured it out. I know Hillsboro's watching us, and when we had members of CART and the Hillsboro MPO on the Project Advisory Committee, they said, you guys are so far ahead, we never had these discussions, and they're 2 years away. And so it has been a good process, and just the communication has been incredible. We need to keep this momentum going. And we will be successful. People will be chilling like the next door. So, if there's no other business, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.